Animal, Vegetable, Miracle, A Year of Food Life, by Barbara Kingsolver, with Stephen L. Hopp and Camille Kingsolver. Picture yourself standing under the brutal Arizona sun, heat waves shimmering off the pavement, the desert around you looking absolutely parched and desperate for water. You duck into a small gas station for snacks before a long drive, escaping this familiar but increasingly struggling home. Inside, blessed air conditioning hums as you browse the aisles. Then suddenly, the sky outside goes dark. Rain, actual rain, after nearly 200 days of drought. You mention it to the clerk, something about how wonderful it is, how desperately they need it. She frowns hard. "It better not," she says firmly. "Tomorrow's my first day off in 2 weeks, and I want to wash my car." Let that sink in for a second. Someone actually hoping it won't rain in a dying desert, just so they can wash their car. It's such a small moment, almost absurd, really, but it reveals how incredibly disconnected many of us have become from the very things that keep us alive: the earth, the water, the food on our plates. Now imagine a completely different scene. A few days later, after driving across the country, that same family sits in a cozy diner tucked into the green hills of Appalachia. Outside, clouds gather. Thunder rumbles, and rain starts to fall. The young waitress pauses mid-step, glancing out the window, not with annoyance, but with genuine satisfaction. "Listen at that," she says, smiling. "Don't we need it?" She hopes it's a good long rain, but not so hard it washes away the crops. Two wishes. Two completely different worlds. One, born from convenience, totally cut off from what the land actually needs. The other rooted in understanding, however simple, of what it takes for things to grow, for life to continue. It was exactly this kind of disconnect, this growing unease with a food system that felt increasingly fake and unsustainable, that pushed writer Barbara Kingsolver and her family on an extraordinary adventure. Her husband Stephen, a biology professor, and their daughters Camille and Lily joined her in documenting it all in their remarkable book, Animal, Vegetable, Miracle, A Year of Food Life. This isn't just another book. It's the real story of a deliberate, year-long experiment to unplug from the industrial food machine and reconnect with the actual sources of their meals. They decided to leave Tucson, Arizona, a city increasingly dependent on borrowed water and food shipped from halfway around the world, and return to a family farm in southern Appalachia, where rain actually falls from the sky and green things grow everywhere. Their challenge? For 1 full year, eat only food grown in their own garden, raised by themselves or sourced from their immediate neighbors and county. No bananas flown in from Ecuador. No strawberries trucked from California in January. No ingredients with mysterious origins and carbon footprints the size of a small country. It was a radical move in a world where the average food item travels 1,500 miles just to reach our plates. Animal, Vegetable, Miracle, first published in 2007, became an instant phenomenon, striking a chord with millions who felt that same longing for something real and authentic in their relationship with food. It sold millions of copies and has been translated worldwide, inspiring countless people to look at their dinner plates, and the world itself, in a completely new way. Barbara Kingsolver, already celebrated for novels like The Poisonwood Bible, brought her signature blend of beautiful prose, sharp observation, and deep empathy to this nonfiction account. Joined by her husband Stephen Hopp, who provides fascinating scientific sidebars, and her daughter Camille, offering recipes and a younger perspective, the book becomes this rich, multi-layered family narrative. What does it truly mean to eat locally? Is it even possible? Is it all deprivation, or could it actually be a richer way of living? Stick with me, and over the next little while, we'll explore the Kingsolver family's adventure. We'll uncover the surprising joys, the steep learning curves, and the profound lessons they learned during their year of eating close to home. You'll discover not just what they ate in January, but why their journey matters more today than ever before. This isn't just about food. It's about connection, community, and finding our place in the natural world. Our story begins as many great journeys do, with a departure. Barbara Kingsolver and her family weren't just moving houses. They were completely changing their entire way of life. Leaving behind the sun-baked beauty and mounting unsustainability of Tucson, Arizona, they set their sights on a piece of land Stephen had owned for years in the southern Appalachians. It wasn't just a return to family roots for Barbara. It was a conscious choice to live in a place that could, quite literally, feed them. Tucson, like so many modern cities, had become this marvel of convenience, offering everything human culture could devise, except, ironically, the actual means of survival. Its food arrived in refrigerated trucks from distant lands, its water pumped from dwindling ancient aquifers, or piped across deserts from rivers shrinking under the weight of human demand. Living there felt increasingly like living on borrowed time, on borrowed resources. Barbara puts it plainly: they wanted to live where rain falls, crops grow, and drinking water bubbles right up out of the ground. A seemingly simple desire, yet completely countercultural in an age of globalized everything. This move wasn't about romanticizing some past that never existed. It was about confronting a present that felt increasingly shaky. The modern American food system, they observed, runs on an absolutely staggering amount of fossil fuel. We use nearly as much oil to feed ourselves powering tractors, making fertilizers and pesticides, transporting, processing, packaging, refrigerating as we do to fuel our cars. That average food item traveling 1,500 miles? It's a journey subsidized by cheap oil, a limited-time offer from planet Earth. The Kingsolvers felt this disconnect, this absurdity in relying on Saudi Arabia's gas or Mexico's water to sustain life in Arizona. They longed for a life aligned differently, a life where their daily bread didn't demand such a heavy global toll. And so the adventure began, 1 year dedicated to eating locally. The rules were simple, yet completely daunting. They would eat food produced within their own county, or at worst, their state. Anything from further away required an extraordinary reason, and "I want it" definitely didn't count. This wasn't about deprivation for its own sake, but about genuine connection with their food sources. They wanted to know the story behind their meals, and often that would mean knowing the person who grew it, frequently themselves. But where do you even start such a project? January 1st seemed arbitrary and honestly pretty bleak. February wasn't much better. They decided to align their start with the growing season itself, waiting for that first, much-anticipated sign of cultivated life emerging from the warming soil. They were waiting for asparagus. Asparagus, Barbara tells us, is a special creature. A perennial, unlike most of our annual vegetables. It stores energy in its roots over winter, ready to send up those eager green spears at the first hint of spring. It's the vegetable prize for patience, requiring 3 years from planting before you can even begin to harvest. And even then, the harvest season is short, maybe 8 weeks, before the grower must back off, allowing the plant to grow tall and feathery to store energy for next year. Its very life cycle screams seasonality. Seeing asparagus in the supermarket in October means it's traveled a long, flavor-killing journey. True appreciation, the Kingsolvers suggest, lies in savoring it intensely during its fleeting season, and then letting it go. This waiting, this anticipation became a central theme. In our modern culture, we've grown totally accustomed to having everything, always. We can buy strawberries in January, tomatoes in March, asparagus year-round. But this constant availability comes at a serious cost, not just in fossil fuels, but in flavor, and perhaps in appreciation. Waiting for food to come into season means tasting it at its absolute peak. It transforms eating from mere routine maintenance into something closer to recreation, even celebration. European cultures often celebrate the arrival of seasonal foods, the first asparagus, the new wine, the summer tomatoes. Could Americans rediscover this rhythm, this deeper connection? They established their ground rules: meat and produce strictly from their county, honey instead of sugar. Local eggs were easy. Highly processed foods were already mostly avoided. Grains and olive oil presented a real challenge. Olives don't exactly grow in Appalachia, and local mills often sourced wheat from other states. They decided these would be their main exceptions, aiming for the least processed forms available. They also allowed themselves one luxury item each: coffee for Stephen, dried fruit for Camille, hot chocolate for Lily, spices for Barbara, all sourced through fair trade channels that actually benefit growers. With the rules set, the reality of early spring hit home hard. Fresh fruit, please? Camille had scrawled desperately on the list. In April, ripe fruit belonged to bikini climates. Strawberries will be coming soon, Barbara offered, the first of many cheerleader-style pep talks. Their hope rested entirely on the farmers. Market opening that Saturday. Saturday dawned cold and windy, a dogwood winter freeze threatening the newly blossomed orchards. The market was honestly grim. Only 8 brave vendors huddled against the wind. Not another customer in sight. Surely only shriveled potatoes awaited them, but they found treasures: green onions, turkey sausage, lamb, baby lettuce, painstakingly shelled black walnuts, and then a splash of crimson: rhubarb. Technically a vegetable, but a perfectly fine stand-in for April fruit. That night, they made an apple rhubarb cobbler using the last frozen apples from the previous summer, ringing out the old year, ringing in the new. The simple act of showing up, of committing to the local pledge even when it was cold and inconvenient, yielded unexpected treasures and reinforced their determination. As spring deepened, the family dove headfirst into the heart of growing their own food. Their Appalachian farm, nestled in a hollow, presented real challenges: mostly steep slopes and limited direct sunlight. Their solution was pretty ingenious: 2 long terraces carved into the south-facing mountainside, enriched year after year with compost and cover crops, gradually becoming the fertile ground for their sustenance. Barbara's love affair with seed catalogs in January speaks to the allure of variety, the sheer poetry of names like Moon and Stars watermelon or Collective Farmwoman melon. This led them to embrace heirloom vegetables, open-pollinated varieties passed down through generations, saved for flavor, resilience, and history. These stand in stark contrast to modern hybrid seeds, designed for uniformity, mechanized harvest, and long-distance travel, often completely sacrificing taste in the process. Even more troubling is genetic modification, technology controlled by just a handful of corporations, often designed to make crops dependent on specific chemicals, or even genetically sterile terminator genes, to force farmers to buy seeds every single year. The rise of industrial agriculture, particularly after World War II, fundamentally reshaped the American landscape and diet. Ammonium nitrate, once used for making bombs, became cheap fertilizer, leading to explosive growth in corn and soybean yields. Government policies shifted dramatically, favoring these commodity crops, transforming them from actual food into standardized raw materials for an extractive industry. Corn and soybeans became the hidden ingredients in thousands of products: high-fructose corn syrup, hydrogenated oils, lecithin, maltodextrin. Even the meat from animals raised in concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, fed completely unnatural diets of cheap corn. This system produced a massive surplus of calories, 700 more per person per day than in 1980. And the food industry, Barbara points out with chilling clarity, figured out exactly how to get those unwanted calories into our bodies through supersized portions, relentless marketing especially aimed at kids, and the exploitation of our natural craving for fats and sugar. The result? An epidemic of obesity and diet-related diseases, a nation with, as Kingsolver puts it, an eating disorder. Other cultures, she observes, maintain much stronger food traditions, codes of survival, health, and control of excess, rooted in place and history. Italy, France, Japan, these places have ancient connections between land and diet. The United States, by contrast, lacks any unified food culture. leaving us vulnerable to fad diets and the manipulations of the food industry. We've lost the intuitive knowledge our grandparents had about seasonality, preservation, and living well on what the land provides. We don't know beans about beans, literally. Barbara shares humorous, yet honestly sad stories, like the friend who never knew a potato had a plant part, or young Malcolm who guessed spaghetti might be a root vegetable, illustrating this profound disconnect. But the Kingsolvers' project wasn't just about pointing fingers. It was about actively seeking a solution, building their own food culture rooted in their Appalachian place. This involved not just gardening, but raising animals. Lily, the youngest daughter, embraced this with real entrepreneurial energy, starting her own Lovely Layers egg business. Her journey from loving her chickens as much as her mother, or maybe 6/7 as much, to pragmatically deciding we'll only kill the mean ones, to fund a horse illustrates the complex, sometimes uncomfortable, realities of farming life. The family also decided to raise turkeys, but not the standard broad-breasted white, that genetically limited, industrially bred bird incapable of natural mating or even surviving much past slaughter weight. They chose Bourbon Reds, a heritage breed, joining a movement to preserve the genetic diversity and hardier traits of older livestock varieties. Raising these birds brought them face to face with the cycle of life and death in a way that buying shrink-wrapped meat at the supermarket never could. Harvest Day wasn't easy or pleasant, but it was honest, a direct participation in the process of sustenance. Kingsolver reflects thoughtfully on the ethics of eating meat, arguing against the hypocrisy of condemning animal harvest, while completely ignoring the deaths inherent in industrial crop production, pesticides, habitat loss. For her, the key is humane treatment, ensuring the animal has a genuinely good life before it becomes food. Their year unfolds following the rhythm of the vegetannual, that imaginary plant bearing all vegetables in their natural sequence. Spring brings the tender leaves and shoots, spinach, lettuce, asparagus, peas. Summer swells with fruits. First the small, tender ones like zucchini and green beans, then the ripe bounty of tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, culminating in the heavy melons and hard-shelled winter squash. Autumn yields the root crops, potatoes, carrots, beets, onions, garlic, the stored energy for winter. Learning to eat seasonally meant embracing total abundance when it arrived. July brought zucchini larceny, the comical, overwhelming wave of summer squash that inspires neighbors to lock their car doors at church. August was life in a red state, completely dominated by the relentless tide of tomatoes, hundreds of pounds demanding canning, roasting, drying, turning into sauce. This intensive preservation work wasn't drudgery, though. It was an investment, creating real fast food for the winter months ahead. Canning parties became social events, connecting them to older traditions and ensuring their pantry held the taste of summer sunshine all through the cold months. They discovered the richness of their local food community. Farmers' markets became weekly rituals, not just for shopping, but for genuine connection. They learned about community-supported agriculture, or CSA, met farmers like Amy in Massachusetts, growing astonishing June tomatoes in soil-based greenhouses, and visited the Farmer's Diner in Vermont, a restaurant built entirely around locally sourced ingredients, truly embodying the principle of eating neighborly. Their trip to Italy offered a powerful contrast, a culture deeply, unapologetically rooted in its local terroir, where food is obsession, celebration, and identity all rolled into one. The Italian agriturismo, a farm-stay vacation centered completely around meals grown on-site, highlighted a profound respect for farmers and the connection between land and table. Back home, winter arrived, bringing the age-old question, what do you eat in January? The answer wasn't deprivation, but a shift in focus. The pantry, packed with the summer's preserved bounty, became their grocery store. Root vegetables, winter squash, dried beans, frozen pesto, canned tomatoes, local meats, and Lily's winter-laying hens provided plenty of good food. It required planning, sure, but the winter kitchen was actually relaxed, compared to the absolute frenzy of summer harvest season. They learned that eating locally in winter is surprisingly easy, but the time to prepare for it is definitely August. As their year drew to a close, marked by the return of asparagus, they realized the experiment hadn't just changed their diet, it had changed them fundamentally. They had developed new skills, new routines, new tastes, and a profound connection to their place. They saw the landscape completely differently now, understanding its cycles and offerings in this intimate way. They had stepped off the treadmill of consumer convenience and discovered a rhythm that felt more sustainable, more nourishing, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually too. The economics were genuinely surprising. By growing so much of their own food and cooking from scratch, they spent significantly less money than before, feeding themselves extremely well on about 50 cents per person per meal, plus the value of their garden harvest. Their food footprint shrank dramatically. The year wasn't without its challenges, its moments of desperately longing for forbidden fruit or coffee, or just the sheer hard work of it all. But the overwhelming feeling was one of gain, not loss. They hadn't just survived, they had absolutely thrived. They had rediscovered ancient knowledge, fostered real community connections, and found deep satisfaction in the tangible realities of soil, seed, and sustenance. Their journey wasn't about purity or perfection, but about consciousness, connection, and the quiet joy of aligning their lives with the rhythms of the earth. It was, as their friends suggested, a kind of purification ritual. And the cycle continues. The book ends not with some final conclusion, but with a beginning. The miracle of new life, as one of their heritage turkey hens, #1 mother, successfully hatches her own chicks. It's a small victory against the tide of industrial sameness, a real testament to nature's resilience, and a symbol of hope. Time begins again. What Barbara Kingsolver and her family achieved in Animal, Vegetable Miracle is way more than just a charming story about a year spent on a farm. It's a profound exploration of our relationship with food, with the land, and ultimately, with ourselves. Reading it feels like sitting down with wise, funny, and incredibly practical friends who are sharing not just what they learned, but why it matters so deeply. The book works as a gentle yet powerful critique of our modern food system. It lays bare the hidden costs, environmental, social, and personal, of prioritizing convenience and cheapness above absolutely everything else. The reliance on fossil fuels, the depletion of water resources, the homogenization of our diets through industrial agriculture, the loss of traditional farming knowledge, the disconnect between eaters and the sources of their food. These aren't abstract problems. They're woven into the fabric of our daily lives, often completely invisibly. Kingsolver doesn't lecture or preach, but through the lens of her family's experience, she makes these complex issues tangible and totally relatable. But this book is far more than just pointing out problems. It's fundamentally a story of hope and real empowerment. It demonstrates that change is absolutely possible, that we can make different choices, and that those choices can lead to a richer, more satisfying way of living. The family's journey is one of rediscovery, rediscovering the taste of truly fresh, seasonal food, rediscovering the skills of growing, preserving, and cooking, rediscovering the importance of community and being good neighbors, and rediscovering the deep, almost primal satisfaction that comes from participating directly in your own sustenance. One of the most powerful threads running through the book is this idea of seasonality. In a world desperately striving for perpetual summer, where any food is supposedly available anytime, the Kingsolvers embrace the rhythm of the seasons. Waiting for asparagus, absolutely feasting on tomatoes in August, relying on root vegetables in January. This isn't presented as deprivation, but as a way to cultivate appreciation, patience, and a deeper connection to the natural world. It's the Zorba diet, indulging fully in what the season offers, knowing its time is beautifully fleeting. This mindful approach transforms eating from a mere biological necessity into a conscious act, rich with context and meaning. The book also champions the real value of local, eating locally isn't just about reducing food miles, though that's certainly important. It's about rebuilding local economies, supporting small farmers, preserving actual farmland, fostering community connections, and ensuring food security. It's about knowing the real story behind your food, shaking the hand that feeds you. The trust built between local growers and eaters, as shown through Amy's greenhouse tomatoes or the farmer's diner, stands in sharp contrast to the anonymity and often deceptive labeling of the global supermarket system. Perhaps the most genuinely inspiring aspect is the emphasis on participation and skill building. Whether it's Lily starting her egg business, the family learning to make cheese, or mastering the art of canning, the book celebrates the empowerment that comes from actually doing things. It pushes back against the learned helplessness fostered by a culture of total convenience, reminding us that producing and preparing food are fundamental human activities, accessible to almost everyone, even in small ways. Container gardening, supporting farmers, markets, cooking from scratch. These aren't just quaint hobbies, they're acts of resilience and genuine connection. So what can we actually take away from this family's year? How can someone living a busy, maybe urban life apply these lessons? First, pay attention. Start noticing where your food actually comes from. Read labels carefully. Ask questions at the grocery store or restaurant. Just becoming conscious of the journey your food takes is a genuinely powerful first step. Second, visit a farmer's market. Even if you just go to look around, it's an education. Talk to the farmers. See what's actually growing in your region right now. Maybe buy one thing you've never tried before. Third, try cooking one meal a week from scratch, using seasonal, locally sourced ingredients if at all possible. It doesn't have to be complicated. Simple preparations often best showcase the flavor of fresh food. Rediscover your kitchen not just as a place of chores, but as a place of creation and connection. Animal Vegetable Miracle isn't some rigid instruction manual or a demand for everyone to move to a farm. It's an invitation to think differently about food, to value connection over convenience, to embrace the rhythms of nature, and to find joy and meaning in the simple, essential act of feeding ourselves and our families. It reminds us that our choices genuinely matter, that even small steps can contribute to healthier lives, stronger communities, and a more sustainable world. It suggests that reconnecting with our food is, in a real way, reconnecting with the best parts of ourselves. Also, if this exploration added value to your day, hitting that like button really helps others find it, and subscribing means you won't miss our next dive into another perspective-shifting book from the shelves of the most thoughtful minds. Let's continue learning and growing together.